Nope.
Day 1. Dear Journal, I just met my brother Joshua for the first time. After preparing for so long, my parents finally brought him home. I got to hold him, played with him for a bit, and I helped my mom take care of him all day. She has never seemed happier, and I can't blame her. It's just been me for so long. All the doctors said she would never be able to have another child. She never let that stop her, though. She was determined to have another baby to look after. It wasn't in the most traditional way. I don't want to get into the specifics right now, but suffice to say, she received her share of questions, comments, and outright judgments from all the family and friends that she shared the news with. I tried not to get in between anything, but I could often overhear the squabbles. The words desperate and crazy were thrown around quite liberally. But my mom's a strong woman and didn't let that get to her. Nothing could stop her. She knew she wanted another baby. She knew she wanted Joshua. Day 2. Dear Journal, Joshua has instantly become the apple of my mother's eye. My father and I have essentially become background noise. During our family dinner this evening, there was little to no conversation. My father did his best to get involved in the caretaking of his new son, but Mother objected every time. He eventually gave up, noticeably frustrated, and excused himself. It was clear that he was not a fan of this whole idea. When the idea of getting Joshua first came up, he was furious. After a loud, heated debate that ended in the two of them not speaking to one another for a few days, my mother began to play the sympathy card. She began leaving around small baby toys and clothing, a rattle here, a booty there. One night I caught Dad holding the small piece of footwear. At first he just grasped it, with a stoic look adhered to his usually upbeat face. I watched as he clenched it in his fist before sniffling and wiping some tears from his eyes. That night I heard them both in the room next door. My mother was cheering, showering him with loving words and gratitude. He had agreed to bringing Joshua home. The only thing that really bothered me was that no one thought to ask my opinion. Day 3. Dear Journal, Dad left the house today. Mom kicked him out, but if you ask him, he'll say he chose to leave. He had a small bag with him. Before he left, he gave me a hug, telling me that he'll be back soon and to call him if I needed anything. He put a lot of emphasis on anything. When things had settled down, I quietly made my way to the kitchen, where the argument had taken place. I peeked around the corner and saw my mom cradling Joshua in her arms. She was whispering in his ear. She was going on and on, speaking softly in order to soothe him. Obviously, Joshua was not making a sound, but she insisted on rocking and comforting her new son. It's been hours, and she's still there. Day 4. Dear Journal, things have gotten worse, as if that was even possible. Since Dad left, I'm the only one here to bear the brunt of my mother's outbursts. I was awoken today by her shouting at me. I had been charging my phone in the basement last night and forgot to cover up the outlet with the safety plug before heading back up. She was outraged that I could be so careless. What if Joshua had found his way to it? She screamed. Could you imagine what could have happened? In response, I stared boldly in her furious eyes and answered, nothing. At that, her face changed from one of rage to one of shock and disgust, but only for a brief moment. It didn't take long for it to return to the former, but with a more amplified sense of indignation. She wound back and slapped me across the face. Watch how you talk about your brother. He is a gift to this family. He completes us. We need him. I held my sore face and looked up at the insane woman who was once my mother before breathing out, no, you need him. I wish he never came home. And I'm sure Dad feels the same way. She wound back immediately to try to hit me again, but I grabbed her hand mid-motion and threw it down. I was on my feet now. Adrenaline was coursing through me. The hatred she spewed when she came in was contagious, and I had finally been infected. Through gritted teeth, she scowled at me until her head abruptly jerked in order to face the door. You've woken Joshua. Don't want to keep him waiting, I retorted with a bitter bite. With that, she turned around and fled the room, slamming the door behind her. The rest of that day was ripe with tension. For the most part, I just stayed in my room. When I couldn't wait any longer, I tiptoed down the stairs towards the kitchen to get some food. I did not want to run the risk of crossing paths with my mom, but since I had not eaten all day, the hunger was getting the better of me. It was quiet in the house. So quiet, I was sure that Mom had taken Joshua and left for a bit. I relaxed myself and strutted to the kitchen. As I rounded the corner, I screamed and jumped back, startled. There, in the middle of the dark kitchen, sat my mother. She was sitting on the floor with Joshua on her lap. Her hair was still a mess from the morning. She hadn't even changed out of her pajamas. Had she been sitting there all day? I couldn't be sure. Her eyes pierced through me as she looked up with a venomous scowl. The worst part was, and I know this sounds crazy, I couldn't help but feel that Joshua was also staring up at me with the same malevolence in his hollow little eyes. Day 5. Dear Journal, I awoke today to an empty house. I treaded carefully as I explored every corner, making sure my mother wasn't having another episode of insanity. Sure enough, I was alone. I made sure to take full advantage. After heading straight to the kitchen and stocking up on food, I scoured the house for anything else I would need before heading back into my room and locking the door. I figured all I had to do was wait until Dad came back home for things to return, at least somewhat, back to normal. Unfortunately, he would probably be gone longer than originally planned. I was stirred from my sleep late last night from the sound of my mother screaming in the kitchen. I quietly crept to my door and cracked it open to overhear the commotion. She was on the phone, yelling at my father. I can't be sure what it was about, but I can guess. My mother was shouting that he was crazy, insensitive, and evil. Based on that, I assume he suggested we give Joshua away. If that was what he suggested, I can't say I don't support the idea. While Joshua himself has not done anything to me, the effect he's had on my mother and our entire family overall has been extremely detrimental. As long as he's around, my mother will never heal. My mother will never be able to get over our loss. It will be the final blow on an already failing marriage that all started on that day. The day we lost the first Joshua. I still remember the days leading up to it. The energy in the house was radiant. Friends, neighbors, extended family, they were all stopping by regularly to drop off gifts and give last-minute advice to everybody. If I had $1 for every time someone asked me if I was ready to have a little brother, I'd probably be rich. It took me a while, but eventually I was ready. It was hard though, seeing my mom get pregnant so late in her life. I'm in my early 20s, old enough to be a parent myself. Miracles of modern science, I suppose, or so we thought. Then it happened. My mother's water broke. We were prepared, had our bags and clothes ready and everything, so we darted out of the house in no time. Everything was going according to plan until, in the car, my mom noticed the blood.
Oh my God!
It was getting everywhere.
Oh my God!
Things became surreal.
Oh
My dad became stone cold silent, driving like a madman. My mother's screams were deafening. All I could do was cry. The next few hours were a blur. The doctors said they did everything they could, but Joshua had been born still. We have been trying to recover ever since. About a month ago is when my mother first brought up the idea of bringing home another Joshua. I never voiced my opinion, but I silently sided with my dad, who was against it. Eventually, he agreed, if for no other reason than to appease my mother. He loves her. He tried so hard to make her smile again after the real Joshua had died. It wasn't until he agreed to the new Joshua that it finally happened. But none of that matters now. I'm old enough to know that no marriage, despite how strong it was at one point, is invincible. I accepted the potential of their divorce a long time ago, and I now knew it would be happening. I tried calling my dad a little while ago. No answer. He's probably out at a bar or something, and I can't blame him. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? I'd be drinking too if I were in his shoes. I wish I could see him though, or at least talk to him. Hell, if it were up to me, I'd up and leave right now. Anywhere would be better than here. Day 6. Dear Journal, in the early hours of the morning, I woke up to my mom finally coming home. It was still dark outside, so I checked the time and saw it was only 3:30. I laid in bed and listened for a while. The whole situation made me feel really uneasy. I can't explain it, but I had a gut reaction that something was wrong. I listened as she made her way up to her bedroom, then to the bathroom, turning on the shower. The whole time she was humming to herself. I recognized it. Rockabye Baby. When the water cut off, all I could hear was that eerie tune. I let my curiosity get the better of me, slowly crawling out of my bed, towards the bedroom door. I peeked out of the cracked opening, down the hallway to the bathroom. Mom had left the bathroom door slightly open, allowing some light to spill through. I could hear the humming still radiating from inside. I began to slowly creep down the hallway and stop short of the door. As soon as I did, the humming came to a halt. I literally held my breath in both fear and suspense. After several seconds of paralyzing tension, my mother broke the silence. "Hello, sweetheart." She sounded so upbeat, chipper even. It was a complete 180 from the tone and demeanor she had been sporting for the past few days. "Hey Mom, everything alright? I was a bit worried about you." I lied. I didn't want her to be aware of my true feelings. "Of course, dear, everything is alright now. I'm fine, and most importantly, Joshua is safe. Just giving him a little bath right now," she replied as I heard the water swishing around. I wished her good night and headed back to my bed. Needless to say, it took me a while to fall back asleep. First thing I did when I woke up was call my dad, but there was still no answer. I got a little angry at this point. Why would he be dodging me like this? If he wasn't going to call me back, he could at least send me a text or something. I had decided I would finally leave the house that day and planned to join him wherever he was. I guess that's not happening now. I will be heading to my friend's house instead, though. Needless to say, I won't be telling Mom about it. I'm sure she'll be perfectly content alone here with her new child. Something else happened later on. I was packing a bag and realized that some of my shirts I wanted were not in my room. I headed to the basement to search the laundry. Sure enough, they were in the dryer. Before I turned around to head out, I noticed something on the laundry machine. A small, red streak. I stood there frozen, with a million things running through my mind. As I slowly raised the lid of the machine, I was greeted by what I feared I would see. It was my mother's clothing, covered in blood. She had carelessly thrown them in some time after getting home last night. What had she done to herself? Has it really come to this? Self-harm? Things were so much worse than I thought. Day 7. Dear Journal. Today's the first day out of the house. Before I left last night, my mother tried insisting I join her for dinner. She had already poured me a bowl of stew and was urging me to join her and my brother for a family meal. I almost agreed to it too, until I saw Joshua's beady little eyes looking up at me. I know I shouldn't, but I've really grown to hate him. I am completely aware that he hasn't done anything, but at the same time, I can't help but associate his arrival to the final unraveling of my family. I lied and told her I was going to run some errands really quick and that I'd be back in a few hours. I went straight to my buddy's place, and I have been there ever since. She tried calling me a few times and I ignored it. There was no voicemail, no text, just missed calls. Then it turned into picture messages. She began sending photos of Joshua with short captions like, "Joshua misses you," and "You've upset your baby brother." I still haven't heard from Dad. At this point, I'm not sure if I should be angry or just worried. Day 8. Dear Journal. I figured I should write about this as soon as possible. Soon enough, I won't have any time to update. Even if the time was there, I imagine that my current state of shock and denial will fade away, and I won't have the mental capacity to do anything at all. This morning, I woke up and checked my phone, only to find several texts from my dad. They explained that he had come back home and was demanding I do the same. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer, so I sent a text instead. "Everything okay with Mom?" I asked. As soon as it was delivered, the typing bubbles appeared. He had been holding the phone, which is odd since I literally had just called. A reply came in. "Yes, your mother and brother are fine. Come home, please." At this point, I assumed my mother was standing over his shoulder, begging him to convince me to come back. I was a bit surprised of how fast things had turned around, but regardless, I was eager to finally see my dad after all this time and fill him in on everything that had been happening. I told my friend whom I had been staying with, and he offered to drive me back. That way, if the tension was still there, I could leave again right away. I thanked him and accepted. I arrived back home. I told my friend that after 5 minutes or so, I'll either shoot him a text to go on ahead without me, or I'll be coming back out. I began to make my way to the front door. I could see through the screen that the main door was left open. I let myself in and began calling out to my parents. There was no answer. I checked the main level. Nothing. I made my way upstairs and checked the bedrooms. Also nothing. Finally, I made my way to the basement. I slowly crept down the steps and saw that the lights were on. "Mom? Dad? You guys down here?" I called out. That's when I reached the last step. and my blood inexplicably ran cold. There on the couch, with Joshua on her lap, was my mother. We stared at each other in silence for a bit before she spoke. With a twinge of anger, she asked, "Where have you been? Do you know how worried you had us?" "I'm sorry, I needed a break. I didn't want to worry you guys, especially since Dad was gone too, and I didn't think—"
"Exactly, you little shit," she cut me off. "You didn't think. You never think."
I looked back at her, surprised and speechless. I definitely did not see this coming. I thought I would come back, see my parents, and things would go back to normal, but now I was getting chewed out and my dad wasn't even here. I began to feel my own anger rising, and I barked back, "Where the hell is Dad? Why would he leave before I even got back?"
"Don't worry about him. He made his choice. That selfish prick wants to divide this family? He wants me to lose Joshua, lose my baby?"
She looked down at Joshua and began caressing his head. While her focus was off of me, I slid my phone out of my pocket and began to call Dad. That's when things took a huge turn for the worse. In the small drawer beside the couch, I heard a phone begin to vibrate. My eyes shot wide open and I looked up at my mother. She stared carelessly at the buzzing beside her before slowly turning to meet my gaze. I simply stood there with my lips quivering and my eyes glued to my mom until she finally spoke.
"Like I said, your father made his choice. What is yours going to be?"
I broke out of my trance and finally found my voice. I shakily began to call out for my dad until I was shouting for him. He was not in the house. It had been my mom using his phone.
"That's what I thought. I'm sorry about this, honey,"
my mother said. She was speaking calmly now. I turned to face her in time to see her rise from her seat with Joshua under her arm. She slowly reached from under the cushion and pulled out a large, serrated kitchen knife. Was this really happening? I couldn't believe it. Before I could process anything, she bursted in my direction. Instinct kicked in and I ran for the stairs. I was almost to the top when I felt a searing, hot pain erupt in the back of my leg. I collapsed down and quickly turned to my back. I saw my mom raise her now bloody knife up once again. With my good leg, I wound back and kicked the insane woman directly in her face, causing her to lose balance and fall back down to the floor. Using every ounce of strength that I had, I turned around and made my way to the door. At this point, I was bleeding profusely and limping. Adrenaline was the only thing keeping me on my feet. I heard my mom frantically hurrying up the stairs. I made it to the screen door before I heard her reach me. I turned around and saw the knife coming at me again, this time from the side. I threw up my arm and blocked the slash, causing another large gash to form just beneath my elbow. At this point, I was screaming and lunged at my mom to try and wrestle the knife from her. This caused my mom to lose hold of Joshua. She had dropped him on the ground with an audible thud. She began screaming like a banshee. Her eyes were practically rolled into the back of her head as she fought me. She was wildly bucking around and began to bite and scratch as we both fought over the blade. She grabbed at the open wound on my arm and began to dig her sharp nails inside. With that, I screamed louder than ever, almost blacking out, and fell to my side. At this point, I had lost hope. I looked up one last time, but that's when I saw him. My friend must have heard the commotion and came to investigate. With a single, well-placed sucker punch to the side of my mother's head, he had managed to knock her clean off her feet. He helped me up and held me over his shoulder as we hurried back to the car. The rest was a blur, and I just remember waking up in the hospital. After immediately beginning to panic and thrash around, several nurses came to calm me and explain my situation. In tears, I asked what happened. That's when they called in a police officer. For the sake of privacy and my own sense of comfort, I won't get into too much detail, but the officer was able to answer all of my questions. My mother was being held for questioning and psych evaluations. He explained that they arrived to my house shortly after we left for the hospital. They had received a number of calls from our neighbors and one from my friend. When they got there, they found my mom in the corner, crying and cradling Joshua. She was apologizing for hurting him and was inconsolable. Apparently, an officer got too close and tried to take Joshua away from the clearly unstable woman that held him when she swiped and scratched him across the face. At that, they all charged and piled her in order to restrain her. She refused to answer any questions at first, demanding they bring Joshua to her. She only agreed to comply if they do that for her. Apparently, most of them thought it was a horrible idea, but they eventually agreed. When they brought him, she revealed a lot. My father was not dodging my calls and my texts. My mother explained everything. That night that I heard her come in so late, she had gone to visit him. He had been staying at a motel when she contacted him and convinced him to have her over. When inside, she drugged his whiskey, tied him to the bed, and proceeded to essentially torture him. The room was prepaid for 2 weeks, so the owner and staff never thought to check in. When the police asked her why, she insisted that she had to do it in order to protect Joshua. A direct quote, according to the officer, was, "He wanted to separate me from my baby, and I couldn't have that." After searching our house, they also found a remaining stash of the same drug she had used on my dad. I can't help but think my attitude was slowly drawing her crosshairs on me as well. Fortunately, my father is currently being treated and is in fair, stable condition. He is showing symptoms of dehydration and a slight concussion, but he will make a full recovery soon. Sadly, I can't say the same about our family. My mother won't go to jail for this. Even if she was of sound mind, it's not what I would want. Despite all the insanity she put us through, I still love her and want what's best for her. The officer had some last questions before leaving and closing the case. Since my mother was in a padded room somewhere and my dad was being treated for a head injury, I was put in charge of some decisions. One of which was what to do with Joshua. They brought him into my hospital room. I stared at it, dirty and cracked from the confrontation back at the house. I laughed at myself for a moment. Who would have thought that something so small could cause so much trouble? I handed Joshua back to the officer. "Give him away, sir," I sighed. He looked back at me before throwing Joshua back in his box. "Sounds good, I'll do that. The thrift shops are always looking for quality dolls like this." Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this week's story. If you did, it'd be really cool if you can give it a thumbs up, share it, comment, and all that other good stuff. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more stories that'll have you saying nope, including more originals just like this one. I may be taking another temporary hiatus for the summer, but rest assured I will be back with more creepy and spine-chilling stories very soon. Until then, enjoy your summer, and please, stay safe out there.